Live episode of the Relevant Recruiter Show. Today, we've got a special guest, Kortney Harmon. And Kortney is the Director of Industry Relations at Crelate, as well as the host of the Full Desk Experience podcast. And today, we're going to dig into streamlining for scale, the critical process fixes your recruiting firm needs. So, if you're in the process and you're thinking about scaling right now, this is the right episode for you as we get this thing going. Make sure to go give us a like, go in the comments, let us know that you can hear us. We would appreciate that. And please be interactive with us today. Feel free to ask any questions to Kortney as we get into this podcast. Now, Kortney has over 15 years of experience in the staffing and recruiting industry, and she's established herself as a highly regarded thought leader, dynamic speaker, and respected industry principal in the staffing and recruiting field. She has over a decade of experience. She's a true trusted advisor, empowering professionals and organizations to achieve remarkable growth. And as the host of the Full Desk Experience, she facilitates engaging workshops where participants can directly interact with her and gain invaluable insights. I was just on the podcast last week. It was excellent. Looking forward to that rolling out. Kortney, thank you for joining me today on the Relevant Recruiter Show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I've been following your content for a while. You have such good things, so I'm here to join the club.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to get to know you more. This valuable topic that we've got to the table today. We're going to stay away from college basketball. We talked about this beforehand. Kortney's not a college basketball fan. Um, I
Sorry.
am. I'm going to go Wolfpack. Going to the Salt Lake today. After this, go watch the tourney game. But Kortney, give us a little bit of background. We were talking. We both have college athletic backgrounds. Share real quick as we get into this. How your college career has helped you in your professional career.
I have this discussion with my parents still today because now I have kids, and I'm like, I'm competitive at anything now. Tiddlywinks, you want to play? You're going down. That's just my personality. But according to my mother, I was not that case till much older. So there's hope for my children. That's all I have to say.
Yep.
But athletics really do a lot of things for a human. You play a part of a team. I was a person that always looked for suggestions on how to better my performance. I was a college pitcher. I was a Division I college pitcher, got a full ride. And it was kind of expected for you to give me feedback or my dad to give me criticism on my no-hitter. But my running joke is I could never throw a perfect game without criticism on my no-hitter. And it was almost like it was almost never good enough. And I don't have that mentality, but it was always well, tell me more. Tell me what to do to get better. So I
Mm-hmm.
think athletics really drove that in me. And I'm here in that way in this world today. I think it's really made me who I am, and my passion for operations and staffing and recruiting firms. And really the idea of I'm here to help you get better by tweaking the little things, the foundational things that really make a difference with your
Yeah.
overall growth for an organization. So, yep, it's made me who I am, and I still coach my kids today.
Yeah, I love that. I can definitely align with the competitiveness, and I'm still waiting for my kids to crank that up a notch. Although my oldest daughter is definitely on board with that a little bit more than the younger ones. So, what was in the pitching arsenal? We got a fastball, and what else?
Fastball. I had 2 changeups, screwball, curveball, drop ball, rise ball, drop curve.
Jeez,
You kind of threw
you
it
go
all.
deep in the bag there. I like it. I
It
like
was
it.
more speed for me.
Yeah,
I was, on average 68 to 72 was my speed. So I was more known for speed than my breaking pitches.
there you go. There you go. So, tell us a little bit. How'd you get going into your professional journey here in the recruiting industry?
It's a great question. None of us get here because we wanted to be this whenever we were growing up. Through my college career, I went to school to be an educator. I had a passion for helping others learn, giving back. Learning did not come easily for me whenever I was in school. I had to study with myself before I studied with a smart kid before I took the test. That was just kind of who I was. So I went to school for education, and I came out of that in the whole boom of everybody going back from retirement to go back to find teaching jobs. So I worked at a staffing and recruiting office in the summers of when I was in college, there to help people Lo and behold, I worked for that firm then, 20 years later. But I started in there just by accident in summer jobs because my parents mandated me to get a job. I was an athletic director for a few years, loved it, but then the school levy failed. And lo and behold, I had actually an ATS experience through a college from that firm that I was working with, and someone recruited me to say, "Hey, can you come teach my organization how to use the software that you've used?" And I did, and it was amazing. I loved it, but the competitive nature was like, "Oh, wow, you can make commissions in this job, and they're pretty good. I don't
Hmm.
want to do this anymore. I want more." So my drive really kind of pushed me. I ran a desk for almost 10 years, and then was recruited away to more like combined my degree. It was really like education and staffing and recruiting. So I actually worked for the MRI network where I was ahead of their like franchise organization where I was teaching all new franchisees and went to be director of learning and development with it for a staffing company with 10 operating companies underneath, did all of their training, their processes, and now I get to talk to everybody about that. So lo and behold, it just kind of plays in and it meshes perfectly with my background from education and staffing and recruiting. They kind of bode well together.
Yep, I love it. Now, how did you end up at Crelate, and what kind of attracted you to them specifically?
Yeah. Obviously, being a process person and really about how you do your work and how people function. Whenever we're in the staff and recruiting world, we move fast. And it really comes down to I trained people how to use softwares. So whether it was PCR or Bullhorn, whatever it was, I was teaching people not only the methodology of how to do their job, but the technology of how to track it correctly and see the return. So I'd used a bunch of systems and it was like the necessary evil. And then I got a chance to look at Crelate and it was really functionally, it was easy to use, it was streamlined, it was really focuses on workflow management, which is kind of my gig and my passion. So it really drove me here. And now I get to talk to people for a living about these issues and try to help them succeed. So it, again, mesh perfectly together.
Excellent, excellent. So let's dig into our topic today, which is streamlining for scale. And you know, from your perspective, why do so many recruiting and executive search firms, staffing firms struggle with growth and scalability?
You know, there's a few pieces that go into this facet, but many firms get stuck on this trap of the KPI hamster wheel.
Yep.
We get stuck in this only if you only would make more calls or if you would only do more things, really chasing surface level metrics instead of really focusing on core drivers, what really moves your business forward. I'm a root cause kind of girl. I like to understand the why. I was one of those annoying only children that I needed to know the why the sky was blue concept. It didn't change as I got older. Hate to break it to you. Um, but it was really why. Why is this the case? But when you got in and you were really in analysis with these organizations, um, you understood that some of the foundational issues were fundamental. It really comes down to their process, their systems, their decision-making abilities because of the data that was in the system is hindering their ability to scale and grow because they're not seeing what's in their system or it's not being done right or your systems aren't talking, but it all comes back to process. And those are really your foundational building blocks that if you don't have a process and you're relying on your top performers to do the best thing, or you're relying on people to work outside the system, or you're still working on an Excel spreadsheet, guess what? You're not going to be able to make data driven decisions to help your agency grow. And you can't say, well, oh, well, they get to do what they want. There's no question why you're not growing anymore.
Right. Now, why do you think some firms focus on kind of the surface level activity metrics rather than the core KPIs that drive success?
I think people get caught up in KPIs. There's so many people. We as leaders look at it to be like, well, I need to know what you're doing,
Hmm.
almost like a quantity versus quality concept.
Right.
And then the people that work in our organization look at it as almost like a big brother. Well, they're watching me. They're judging what I'm doing. They don't trust me. In reality, they're amazing coaching tools. It's really diving in. It's not the root cause that you don't have the submittals.
Right.
But what's the root cause between what you're actually saying to your candidates? How are you actually reaching out to potential new logos? What is the process in which you're doing it? What is the words in which you're using? Are you rolling over whenever there's resistance? There's so many pieces to this, and it comes down most of the time. If you didn't have a process, maybe you're not training on that process. Maybe you don't have a preferred way and you're just relying on your top performers to drive your organization. And guess what? It's gotten you through the ups and downs of our economy for the past 10 years. So why change it? And a lot of firms look at that and they're like, it's not broken. Don't fix it. Or that's just the way we've done it over the years.
I love that one.
So it's a struggle, and change is not fun for anybody. Nobody
Right.
loves change. So, there's heels on the ground. They don't want to move forward. And in reality, you have to step back and reevaluate your process, knock down your blocks and build them back up again.
Yeah. W- going a little bit deeper into KPIs, and I know this will be vary from every organization, but what do you think are like 2 or 3 KPIs that every firm should be really focused in on?
I'm going to start where they shouldn't be.
Oh, there you go.
A
Okay.
lot of the times I see people focused solely on call time, right? Or the number of calls that you're making. And in reality, call time might be great. And it's honestly not a bad metric if you're on the phone. But I've seen the people that measure that kind of like bulk the system. They were calling the Santa Claus hotline or the White House and listening. It comes down to a metric that you're measuring them, and they're just trying to find out how to fix it or how to achieve the goal. And they're not understanding, well, I'm not getting placements, I'm not making money, I'm not getting the commissions I want. um, and I'll tell you what, the most successful firms that I see and I've worked with, they really only track one, and it comes down to submissions. Submissions tell you a lot about your organization, and it's, if I'm not getting this submission, there's a root cause to why I'm not getting there. If I am, I'm usually obtaining the goals that I'm trying to hit for myself and for the organization. But that is probably the first and foremost one that you need to measure. Obviously, if you're a leader, you're going to look at, different trends for how your revenue is going, what's happening within your organization. But oftentimes we just measure too many, and we get lost in the quantity of what we're doing versus
Right.
the quality of what we're doing.
Yep. Folks, we're live with Kortney Harmon from Crelate and the host of the Full Desk Experience. Feel free to go into the comments or questions, or go into the comments and ask any questions if you want. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for there. And if you're liking what she has to say, give this a like, thumbs up, some sort of reaction so more people can see this. We're going to continue to dig in here. So can you explain the concept of a shadow process? I mean, we're talking so much about processes right now. Like, what's a shadow process? And how do they really contribute to like a siloed operation within, a recruiting firm?
Yeah, oftentimes, going back to those top performers, it's like we allow people to do what they need to do. But in reality, they're going down the back road on a dirt road on a foggy night, and we don't know how they're getting to where they're getting. We don't necessarily know what they're truly measuring. And we really need to understand uh, if they're obtaining how we need them to get there, and how do we replicate that if it's happening outside of your system. I mean, the last organization I was with, I had an entire operating company that was still solely focused on Excel spreadsheets. um, Granted, they were hitting all their numbers, they were doing all the things that they needed to, but there was no able way to replicate a process of someone that was doing something amazing, because the systems didn't talk to the Excel spreadsheet, right? You weren't able to measure the exact number of submittals, because guess what? That person didn't go update this sheet. And in reality, I don't know about you, Donnie, and the people that you've worked with, but kind of my motto is, if it's not in the system, it didn't happen. Whether that's good or bad, it comes down to commissions checks, whether you're getting paid on time or the right amount. It happens to give you data-driven decisions to drive your organization in a right way. And if you're kind of having your people work outside their systems, if your systems don't talk, if there's no open API, then again, they're doing stuff outside. How many times do your people get caught up on LinkedIn looking for one candidate, and they go down the rabbit hole of the right-hand side to look at the next candidate and the next candidate? And 2 hours later, they're coming up for air and they're like, wow, that was wild.
Right.
But it really comes down to understanding and trying to make that for scale. If you can take your A player and understand the process in which they work, they obviously are doing something correct. If they're working in the systems, they talk, then you're able to say, hey, junior recruiter, I can take you and excel you faster, get your productivity up faster, get you more commission sooner. I can take my B-level recruiters and elevate them to a B plus or an A. It's all about scale for that and how quickly we can do that by understanding the process in which they get there. So we don't necessarily want the back road conversation on a foggy night. We want to be able to see all of the things connect to be able to make our decisions.
Right. Now you love metrics way more than I do, if I'm being honest. I can just tell. I
I
can
am a
see
little
you
type
light
A.
up when you
Don't tell
start talking about
anybody.
metrics, process, and numbers. So I love it. But like, what if I don't have metrics, or if they're incomplete, if they're disconnected, if they're, fall into these categories of some of the things, we've been talking about, what types of challenges might that lead to in my organization?
If you don't have metrics, it's really hard to make decisions of where to go. It's hard to understand what movements you should make if you don't know where you've been. So it's really understanding if you don't have a baseline, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up over it, but slowly start to take what is working and go month after month. Figure out what is happening today, and then how do I make it better? My curveball was working great today. How do I make it better?
Right.
It's literally comes down to just working an inch at a time. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily look at the whole flight of stairs that's ahead of you. You look at one step at a time. So
Yeah.
what is one thing I could make better today? Not I need to hit 52 submissions in 2 months. It's not necessarily that, but it's like, how do I get one extra one this week? Or what
Right.
actions provide me the guidance to do that?
I like that, kind of breaking it down into smaller chunks instead of trying to eat the whole thing, in one bite. Yeah, it's
Overwhelming.
overwhelming for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So in terms of like kind of shifting into like operations now, what are the most common bottlenecks that you see in recruiting firms?
You know, a lot of times is not even having a process. So we talked about not having metrics. You don't have a process because a lot of times what I saw as franchise owners, I saw, hey, I ran a good desk. So I want to be my own boss. I don't want to answer to the man. But in reality, I've gone and I've established, I've got my tools, but I've not, and now I want to hire because I'm doing so well. I have so much business. I need someone to do business development because I don't like to do it. But you don't establish what made you successful. So understanding being successful, understanding, working with your managers. A lot of times, even you yourself, if you are opening up an organization, oftentimes we don't know how to manage people. We don't know how to hold people accountable. We don't necessarily know how they want to be held accountable or what metrics they want to add. So there's actually a lot to that, whether it's leadership as a bottleneck, whether it's metrics as a bottleneck, or it's truly process. Or lo and behold, technology might be your bottleneck because you're literally duplicating data
Right.
or you get lost in the systems and now we have no metrics or understand nothing else that we've actually put our entire day into, and we're not any further ahead at the end of the day than we were in the beginning.
Yeah. I'm curious of your opinion on this. I've speak to a lot of people. We probably speak to a lot of similar people, similar walks of business. But I
Probably.
think one of the common mistakes that I see people make is they think person before process. So, oh, my business development struggling, for example. So I'm going to go hire somebody, and then it's like, well, what's your process you're going to have them do? Oh, well, I don't know. I'll let them figure that out. What is your opinion on that? My opinion I think that's incredibly flawed. But what is your thoughts on something like that and that type of an approach?
I think we're still seeing it today. Not only, yes, I'm a process person, it has to be established because if you don't give someone the right environment to thrive,
Right.
the culture, the team, obviously that sports taught me all so well, then they're not going to be able to thrive. But we're seeing this too in technology today. We have like this silver bullet, shiny tech object syndrome that, like, if I just go get AI today, it's going to make me more productive.
Yep.
But how are you gonna automate? What are you automating? Do you even have your process developed today to go bolt AI on? Because
Yeah.
if you don't, it's not going to be your shiny bullet. It's not going to be your revenue maker. It's not going to be what you want it to be because you've not established the foundational blocks of your foundation, 1 to 2 rows before you start building up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's kind of like short term versus long term, right? So I think that's the challenge with a lot of things that are happening in this industry. Challenge of, really the internet, all these solutions that are out there, right? Is what's the next shiny tech, like you're saying? what's the next shiny strategy? And so many people are focused on like short-term wins versus like long-term solutions and strategies that they can rinse and repeat and then teach and scale from.
It's our overall it's our overall human race. We're immediate gratification. Our
Right.
attention span, decreased 20 seconds overall over the past
Yep.
year, just because of this wonderful thing that you can continue to scroll through.
Yep.
So yeah, it's par for the course
Yeah,
in
well, we're in a now
professional.
world, right? Like this mic, couple weeks ago, I had somebody here listening to me live, and he was talking about my audio. I went after that, bought a mic, and ordered it at Tuesday night, and it was on my doorstep at Wednesday morning. I can get things right now, and I think that's the way we think that everything happens in life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's kind of shift into tech stack here now. Why is integration between ATS, CRM, and other tools so crucial for a firm's success?
You have to think, like, as much as your ATS, it's crucial, but it's only like, I want you to think that as like your foundation again. It's more about the pieces that you can add on that speak, because your recruiters don't spend all day every day only in their ATS. They're
Mm-hmm.
doing work on job boards. They're doing work on virtual interview platforms. They're doing jobs on LinkedIn and social media, depending on their industry. But you don't necessarily want all of their work to go unnoticed, or they don't at least, because if most of them have a commission base and it's activity driven, like, well, if I do this make so many calls and I make so many submittals, I'm going to make so much money this month. And when you kind of take that visibility away from those leaders, they feel like their teams aren't working. Well, you're not doing what you should do, so your job's on the line, or my organization's not scaling, or you know what, I'm not getting what I need out of you. I need to move you in the right seat for the right person at the right time. And in reality, your systems might just not be talking, and they might be doing the work. Or what I've seen a lot of when doing coaching sessions with people is you've developed something to say, I want it to be this talent in chair or whatever that looks like. And your people have a different understanding what that means. And you're just not getting the whole view. So your tech needs to talk. It can't be siloed. It can't be working against each other. And your teams don't want to do duplicate dual data entry. If you're going to require that, they're not going to do it. And it just takes them more time, and then lack of insight from your awareness, because they didn't do it in the first place, because it's hard to get them to do it the first time in your ATS, let alone an additional time.
Right. So could you get a little specific here? Because I know that people that watch a show love like the detailed, excuse me, example. So could you share like a strategy or some strategies? I don't know, maybe you know of a tool out there that's good that you can, recommend that firms can use to improve their process and efficiency.
Well, I'm going to use examples of text messaging and phone calls.
Cool.
Those are the things that I don't necessarily know about you guys, but whenever I ran my desk, I was texting people on my own phone. And it coming from my personal number? Yeah. Is that a problem? Not necessarily. But me as a leader now, if I think of this differently, my teams can text outside of the system, no problem. But I want it to talk. I want to know that they're doing those activities. I want to measure that, because guess what? That data, I don't want that to be theirs per se, because that's what I'm doing as a staffing and recruiting leader in this organization, as a CEO, as an executive. That's what you have to sell. It's your data that you've put in the hard blood, sweat, and tears to be
Right.
able to take this to say, okay, I'm going to sell this. I'm ready for retirement. What is next? But guess what? If it doesn't talk, they're not doing it. I know this is silly, but if you don't have Ring Central or whatever your phone system is integrated into your ATS, it just takes them so much more time to say, oh, here, what's the drop down? Let me scroll. Let me find call. Let me type what was talked about. And I know that seems like such a simple little thing, but whenever you have to do that many more steps, you're not understanding that they're actually making 52 calls, or they actually sent a text message about their interview follow-up or the interview prep. You don't necessarily know if they didn't prep their client. I wonder why it fell off. Well, lo and behold, they were doing it on their personal cell phone, and I wasn't able to have that integration. So it's something as simple as an integration to your phone, to your ATS, will make your team's life so much easier. That goes so much deeper. And when we get into automations, Create, you could have Interstellar, you could have all of the other tools that do the automation. We actually have it built in. It's one of those nice features to make sure that The number one complaint about recruiters is they call too frequently. The number second complaint is they never call enough. They get what they want and they never call me again. What the heck?
Damned if you do and damned if you don't, huh?
Damned if you do, damned if you don't. But you do have the ability to stay in front of them. Keep
Right.
your name in front of them, whether it's posting on social. Um, I'm a big fan in our role today. We always want to have a social presence. Donnie, I know you're the same.
Yep.
I use tools like Buffer on my own to make sure I'm posting daily, be able to do those things on a consistently basis. But I think that's what it comes down to. In anything you do, it's about consistency and ease of use. And that's kind of what we really tout here at Correlate is that workflow process and ease of use to built into all of your systems so they talk and you can truly have a realistic expectation of what your teams are doing.
I love that. The seamless integration. I know you guys just did this with one of my clients and one of their automated tools, and they're just stoked about how it's all kind of tying together and not having to move a candidate from LinkedIn over to here and just, yeah. So I think those integrations are so powerful. What is, when you look at kind of the challenge that an organization will have, right? Bringing on a new system, what role does leadership play in overcoming kind of those issues and in getting the team on board? I'm sure you've had a situation where you've had kind of an owner that's like, yeah, sign up. And then I'm not going to invest in this at all versus an owner that's like, and maybe it's not an owner, just the leader of the organization, whatever it is, but explain the importance of the leadership, when adopting a new process and, even a tool.
I'm going to say there's two parts. First off, you want them early and often. You want them ahead of the process. You want them to see the impact of what's happening. With that being said, that person has to give enough time for that adoption to happen. So whenever I say adoption, you can't choose tomorrow that you're going to change an ATS and everything to be running smoothly in 3 to
Right.
4 weeks. There's time of understanding your own system and your own data. I don't know about you, but there's no better time to clean out your house and get a dumpster as whenever you're moving. So same kind of concept whenever you're switching your ATS. Like that's the time to understand the use of your data. Our professional services team is amazing. They actually do this like, oh, you think that node action type is important? I'm glad you think that because your team's only used it 12 times in 5 years. But the realization and the reality, because
Right.
oftentimes the things that leaders realize is drastically different from the reality.
Right.
So, number 1, make sure they're ahead of the game and you give enough time. But number 2, you have to be in the system. Yep, you don't necessarily have to use it every day. You're not necessarily logging your calls, but are you running your meetings from that? A lot of times, well, I don't know how to run a report. I don't want to do that. But you get buy-in. I can tell you, I've heard it a bunch from other organizations. The CEO doesn't use the system. Why do I have to? So how much money are you spending on wasted tools because you're not bought into the system? You're not bought into the process. And you're not holding your teams accountable. It all comes down to change management. I did a lot of things differently when I was in college. I went and we had a timed mile. Donnie, I hated that dang time mile. It was like the green mile above our gym. But
Yep.
you know who ran it with us every single time that we had to run?
Coach.
Our coach.
Yep.
She beat me every damn time.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things your teams will buy on easier. You'll have an easier time of adoption if you're not only giving your teams the grace in order and time to do it, but you're also bought in with the process, or at least checking in with the people that feel the pain on a pretty consistent basis.
Right. No, that's definitely, my experience too of having that, good leader on board. I think one of the things, again, just kind of from my seat, is so many people have so many tools that they're like not even scratching the surface on their capabilities. And yeah, there's so many things that could probably be either removed or like, let's go all in on this, because I think that goes back into what we were talking about earlier, but a little bit of that shiny object chasing syndrome. And it's like, hey, sometimes that shiny object is already sitting within your tech stack,
Yeah.
and I can't tell you how many people like just miss it because they're not fully invested in what they actually choose to move forward with.
Have you
So
seen organizations where it's like they're like, "Oh, I need a new sourcing tool." It's like, "Well, you have 3 currently."
yeah,
Have you seen
which of
that?
those are working? Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Which of
It's
these
like,
are working for you? What are you doing? How are you executing on this on a daily basis? Yeah. And
yeah.
that's why I go back and I think it's such a important thing for the leadership. I think that sometimes, leaders don't want to touch and get into some of that stuff because it's a lift. right? Especially if you're making a change from, an ATS to another ATS, there's a lift there, So how invested do I want to be in that? I think is where some people get bogged down.
Yeah.
Going into that, could you share a little like of a specific success story of, whether it has to do with Crelate system or just a company you've helped in the past, improve a process or efficiency? What do you
Yeah.
got?
I love that. Yes, I'm a numbers person. You've already called out my type A personality, so thank you very much. At my last organization, they actually didn't have a training, a process. Like, I'm going to say sports analogy. They didn't have a playbook. They didn't
Right.
have a playbook for recruiters. They didn't have a playbook for salespeople. Um, Came in 6 months, changed actually didn't change a whole lot, but just defined it. Because a lot of times it's like, "Well, it's in the Google Drive. Just go find that SOP." People aren't gonna take the time to do that. It's not necessarily laid out in front of them. So, we walked in, we implemented the methodology with the technology of, like, this is what you should do, and this is how you do it in the system, and whether it's a note action or activity or how to track it, and then here's how you measure yourself. Self-awareness. And in doing that, after 6 months, we saw a 146% change in gross profit
Wow.
from someone who didn't go through the system before, or the training, so to say. So they were just kinda left at their own free will to say, "You've been good at your job, you were a recruiter somewhere else. Hey, come do this here. You can do it. Good job. Pat
Right.
on the back. Attaboy." Um, and after implementing that, we saw a drastic difference in productivity. We saw more actuals to change our business, to be able to make business decisions. And I mean, what's better than higher gross profit by that much? Because those people were making commissions earlier. It was keeping their retention at the company. And we were able to then scale our training up. So then we were able to start a certification program, whether it was helping up level the mid-level people. So it wasn't just helping our new recruiters coming in. We were also changing the trajectory in the lives of our middle management to get them certified and get them additional training and get them on track to leadership.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Folks, I'm with Kortney Harmon. We are coming towards kind of the end this year. Got a couple more questions for I see your question, Janelle and Jody, so I will get to those here shortly. Kind of looking ahead, what emerging trends or technologies do you believe will influence, scalability and things like that for recruiting firms?
If I don't say the word AI, someone's gonna find me in Ohio and get me. Um, I think what it comes down to is AI is gonna change the trajectory of our business, absolutely. But I also think we can't lose the human element of anything.
Oh yeah,
That's where
100%.
relationships are made. You and I talked about this too,
Yeah.
even our college coaches before this. Like,
Hmm.
so many people go through the program and leave. I think I texted my coach 2 days ago, and I've been out of college for quite a few years.
Yeah.
But those are the relationships that you don't necessarily have the one and done relationship. It's not necessarily, "Oh, I just made one placement, I never did it again." It's no one hit wonders here. So, as much as you understand AI is a part of your process, it's going to be in it. Figure out where it should be. Figure out what the role of it is. And if it's to help you in productivity, yes, amazing. Help you get to the phone quicker. Help
Yep.
it get to the human element quicker. I am all for it. But don't let it ever replace how you're working and your communications with those
Yeah.
people. So I think it's going to be an interesting journey. I did a podcast with Maurice Fuller we dropped yesterday. He was talking about AI and the tech trends, 10 AI tech trends and how it's changing our industry. I kind of walked out of there amazed. I heard he said a stat, and he said the average or the gold standard of automations and staffing and recruiting firms today is 100. If firms don't have 100 automations, they may be falling short. And I was actually baffled by that number.
That's a large number. Yeah.
That is a large number. So, in understanding it's going to be a part of this, but we just have to figure out what its role is.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I mean I couldn't agree more with the whole thing of AI, and I also think I think some people get overwhelmed with it because they don't fully understand it yet.
Mhm.
Um, but I think the whole fear of AI taking over, I just don't think is valid at all. I think the most dangerous recruiter is somebody who understands AI really, really effectively.
Yeah.
and is just incredibly dangerous with all the other stuff. It's funny. I was talking to a client yesterday, and he's like, with all this AI and how effective I'm becoming with it, his whole thing was like, there's going to be few people that he's been in the game. He's actually an MRI guy. He's been in the game for years, right? And he's like, I've got phone skills that are top notch. I've got these interpersonal skills that are insane. And now I'm going to have AI. He's like, I'm going to be an anomaly because all the younger generation is only going to grow up with AI. So it was a really interesting perspective to think, for those of you that have been playing this recruiting game for a while, you learn AI, you are a dangerous, dangerous individual when you combine kind of the way this industry's always been brought up and then this new technology.
Yeah.
I thought it was really, really interesting perspective. So
He's
totally
turning
aligned with what
Liam
you're saying.
Neeson on you. I will find you.
Yeah, for sure. So a couple questions that kind of came in. One from Janelle was just thoughts on cold emails versus cold calls. Any information or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love that. I will tell you, I think they both have a play here. I'm a fan of a strategy, and it's not necessarily one. It's not necessarily one channel. It's not necessarily one avenue. But it's a play. I'd like to think of a 12-point touch plan strategy within 2 weeks. So, Donnie, I'm not gonna lie, I don't necessarily know what yours is. But it's really the idea of I like to make my presence known before I make a call.
Right.
So I will send a LinkedIn connect or I will send an email prior to, and I will say that I'm going to call. So when my name comes up in caller ID that I'm making that cold call, they're like, that name sounds familiar.
Right. So
And I am
you're warming them up more than it's like a true cold call. Yeah.
warming them up.
Yeah.
So I like phone calls. I don't know about you, but I don't answer anything true cold call. It goes to voicemail until I understand who it is, and then I can call back.
Right.
So I'll cold email before I cold call probably, but calling is part of my arsenal, and it's probably my number one, because if I can get someone on the phone for at least 5 seconds, I can keep them there. I have that much confidence in my ability, and I don't really fall to rejection. So I would say as long as I can get them there, but it's making the right addresses beforehand to get them on the phone.
Right. Right. No, I like that.
What about you,
Warming them up.
Donnie?
Me, I don't cold call, but yeah, I believe in everything you're saying, multi-channel, and for me, I guess the word is like I don't believe in just 100% cold outreach. I think that a phone, obviously, you have to win with the phone in this industry. And so, yeah,
Yep.
what you're saying, totally, I believe in, which is like, yeah, if I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to send them a LinkedIn connection request. I'm going to send them an email. And again, going back into automation, there's so many automated tools that you can basically create 5 to 6 touch points before you ever pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, then it makes a lot more sense. But then on the flip side of that is like, how much time are you spending sifting, trying to find phone numbers, going through voicemail boxes, doing all these things? I think there's more efficient ways. That's just my 2 cents on it. But I don't think that the being off the phone is not the way to win, right? So I just think warmer is where it's at.
I'm
For
more of
sure.
a fan of LinkedIn voicemail or video cold than I am a cold call.
Now we're talking. Yeah, I like that approach.
You didn't pay me to say that.
I love yeah,
I
well,
said
yeah,
you
that,
didn't pay me to say that.
I know I didn't pay that. I'll slide you the 20 after. Um, another question came in from Jody. Thank you, Jody. I'm only tracking interviews. My thought process with that is that any amount of subs that can just be thrown on the wall to see if it sticks. On the other hand, interviews tell me my recruiters are submitting quality, solid candidates. From the interview stage on, it's up to the candidate and client to make a placement. In my opinion, am I wrong to track only interviews?
No, you're not necessarily wrong, but I would stay close to the ratio of what that looks like in the end. One of my favorite classes to teach was driving metrics to success, and it was really about ratio reporting. I knew when I ran my desk, it took me X number of calls to get X number of interviews and X number of submissions to interviews and placements. So I would say, as much as interviews is a great thing. No, I don't think you're wrong. I think it might make sense depending on the industry that you're in, but I would also just try to keep track and maybe make your people keep track of their interview to submission to interviews or interviews to placement ratios, so they can only increase their rate in which they're working, so they can get a clearer view of that picture. So no, I don't think you're wrong, Jody. I think you're right on track, but just keeping an eye on the full picture.
Excellent. Awesome question. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Janelle, for you guys' interaction. If a firm is ready to tackle some of these challenges we've discussed, what initial steps would you recommend they take?
If they don't have any of the pieces in play today, analysis. Figure out where you are today. Don't think you have to go have a process, a 12-point touch plan tomorrow. But figure out, like, just do some recon to figure out what you're doing that works. What is happening today? And I will tell you what works today did not necessarily work 2 years ago. Um, and it is an evolving industry. It is ups and it is downs, and what works today will not work tomorrow. So you just have to understand that, be realistic on the idea, and start small. Start with a 3-plan touch point strategy, or follow a 3-step process in order for your submissions. Whether you're creating a form for all of your people to use for their submissions, or your however it is, start small. Think about 1 to 3 steps. If you're there, add on to that. Don't necessarily SOP your people to death. We don't want that to happen. Don't make it so convoluted that they have to look at a piece of paper to know how to do their job. So I would just say keep it simple and just add on that as you go.
Yep. I love that advice. One last metric we did not connect on today, and I think it's really important, is what was your ERA?
Well, in high school, it was 0.08.
Dang.
Yeah, that's what got me my full ride.
Yeah.
I love that you asked this.
Yeah.
I actually had a good batting average too. I had 400 batting average. It's rare for a pitcher to be a hitter.
Yeah.
I was a
Hmm.
4 hitter. And then, yeah, in college it was different. I think
Oh, yeah.
what
Yeah.
I'm most proud of is I had like 36 straight scoreless innings in D1. Um,
That's
so,
impressive.
so that's
Yep.
good.
Yeah. 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 Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. So, Courtney, first off, if you are listening with us right now, if you could just go in and, tap that reaction button, tremendous amount of value that Courtney gave today. So if you can just give her a love, go in the comments, share your thoughts, about her being on the show, would definitely appreciate that. Courtney, how can people find you, and what would be the next steps if they wanted to explore Crelate?
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. Um, I know Donnie tagged me in this event here, so you can find me there. My email is Kortney or kharmon@crelate.com. Send me an email. On my LinkedIn profile, there is ability to book an appointment with me. I am happy if you want a demo, we can talk. If you want to talk about metrics with your organization, happy to help. And we actually run the podcast as well. It is on the crelate.com website. If you need resources, you can sign up for just like this. We actually do one live event a week, and we actually drop podcast every Thursday. So be looking forward to our second part of our AI conversation. I would encourage you to listen in on all podcast platforms. It's called the Full Desk Experience.
Love it. Courtney, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Loved your energy, love the value. People are already going in and saying how much they enjoyed it. So,
Appreciate it.
yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for dropping some value for the relevant recruiter community. And for those of you will be back, we'll be back next week, live again on Wednesday. I think next week we've got the infamous, before I make the announcement. Yes, next week it's the infamous Rich Rosen. So we'll probably be talking about big billings. So
Yeah.
tune in next Wednesday as we dig into that. Courtney, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
I'll see
having
you
me. I
see you
appreciate you.
later. Make sure you tap that button before you get out. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.